From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. Come January, Portland is in for a reset. The city will have a whole new system of government, a brand new expanded 12-person city council, and a new mayor, along with the city administrator. In this episode of Straight Talk, we talk with the new mayor-elect, who, by the way, looks something like the old mayor. But Keith Wilson says he brings a fresh perspective, running as an outsider who's never served in elected office. It is the first time a candidate with only a business background and no political experience has been elected to a top job in Portland since Mayor Bud Clark in 1984. Keith Wilson grew up in North Portland, attended Oregon State, and got his master's degree in business administration from the University of Portland. He is the CEO of the state's only fossil fuel-free trucking company, Titan Freight Systems. He was initially seen as a longshot candidate, but emerged as the consensus candidate and the victor on election night. He pledged with his experience founding the nonprofit Shelter Portland, he can end unsheltered homelessness in Portland within 1 year. Here to tell us how he plans to do that and to give us more detail on his vision for Portland, welcome to my guest, Mayor-elect Keith Wilson. Welcome back to Straight Talk and congratulations.
It's a pleasure again. Thank you so much.
How do you feel being mayor-elect of Portland, your hometown? Are you getting used to that?
Yeah, you know, it's been a great realization. Where I go now, people will actively walk up and say, good luck. You know, we've got your back. We're with you. That's everything somebody could hope for after an election of that nature. So I'm excited, and I think the city's excited. I can feel a certain hopefulness when I talk to people, and that's the first solid victory that we have.
Well, I've heard you can't walk down the street for more than a few minutes before people stop to talk to you. But initially, as I mentioned, you were a long shot. You really didn't have much name recognition. What do you think the key to your success was?
Certainly a dogged approach to have a conversation with Portland. It was a big message I was trying to provide, and we really provided it in bite-sized bits. But I think the ranked choice and the change in our form of government with the change in how we vote had certainly a hand in it as well, because it allowed me 9 months to have a long conversation instead of bite-sized over a few months of just sound bites and negative campaigning. We were able to have a positive campaign that was meaning and message built, but program built as well.
So there was no primary, so you had longer to do that.
Yep.
So do you think ranked choice voting was successful? Oregonians turned down the statewide ballot measure, but do you think locally it was a success?
I thought so. You know, while there's a lot of talk about voter participation being at a lower level because of the complexity, yes, I mean, we all know that. But as far as allowing us to have a positive conversation with specific goals and programs and platforms being actually brought out, I thought it was very well done. You didn't see the other candidates really going at one another. We were focused on message and platforms, and then we were forced to say, why will that work versus another one, as opposed to just taking shots at one another. So I thought it was a resounding success. But I also, obviously, having won, my perspective would be different. But I do think that having that long ramp up helped me out in a very complex message that I wanted to provide to the city.
Before we get to really the centerpiece of your campaign, ending unsheltered homelessness, I did want to ask you about something you just mentioned to me. We're taping this on Thursday afternoon, that you just had a meeting about bringing Major League Baseball to Portland, the Diamond Project. So tell us about that meeting. How excited are you? Is it a real possibility that we'll get a Major League Baseball team?
I'd say this is as close as we've come. We had 120 people in the boardroom, and you had legislators, legislative assistants, you had business leaders there. So we have a real public-private partnership looking at bringing Major League Baseball. We feel confident it's down to us and one other city, and we're making a solid play. They got a wonderful facility planned over at the Zidale Yards, which is in South Waterfront, overlooking the water with the mountain in the view. I think it's a reality, and this is our time to really make that play. But one of the things that I took out of it is that it would help us, Portland, put the rear view mirror and what had happened this last 4, 5, 6, 7 years behind us and look to the hopefulness of tomorrow. And I think it's a great refrain with what my message was to the city. It's time for us to look forward. Let's talk about big, bright, big swings, which is what Portland was always known for. So I think it's a real positive
message. And that'd be on
message.
top of getting the WNBA,
exactly.
which is really exciting.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what was the centerpiece of your campaign, ending unsheltered homelessness. And you also founded a nonprofit, Shelter Portland. Right. Where does that passion come from, that motivation? Is this something personal for you?
Well, it's personal for me, but I'd say it's personal for a lot of families in Portland too. So while, yes, my brother about 20 years ago was homeless, addicted, suffered from mental illness. My parents and I had the wherewithal to care for him, so I'm his trustee today. My sister also suffered from addiction. She passed away, but I was able to help care for her as well. And not a lot of families have that means that I did, or the time. So imagine those souls that we see on the street suffering. So I think, yes, it's personal. I know it's a lot of families that suffer. I have the ability to do something about it, and I started doing something about it. And I got stories, Laurel, that just keep coming. High school classmates I run into the street, and I saw a hospital worker take a naked man from the hospital over to a park in a wheelchair, stood him up, they turned and went back to the hospital, and he collapsed. And so I cared for that person. But I mean, the city failed that fella in his greatest time of need. So we see it every day in Portland. So I think it's personal, but not just to me. I think it's personal to all of us.
And you're careful when you talk about ending homelessness that you talk about unsheltered homelessness. What does that mean? What's the difference?
Very, very discrete differences. Unsheltered homelessness are those that are suffering on the street in tents, in makeshift shelters, in boats, in RVs. Those are the ones that are in most harm's way right now. And so the goal is to be able to care for those, to end unsheltered homelessness. Once they're being cared for in a safety and secure shelter and sleep, now we have the ability to start focusing on ending homelessness. Our city, our focus has been trying to end homelessness, but in all the cities I've viewed that have had success, you have to end unsheltered homelessness first. You have to end the suffering on the street first before you can have a shot at ending homelessness.
And you've talked about in your first days in office, you want to declare a public safety emergency. Now, we've had a homelessness emergency first declared by former Mayor Charlie Hales back in 2015. How is this different?
Well, we're kind of working on those verbs, if you will, working with our counselors and meeting with them. It's more or less reassessing and reaffirming our housing and homelessness emergency. So we're playing with what we're going to do, but the goal is let's do a reset with council, but let's be more inclusive. Let's talk to Metro, let's talk to the commissioners, let's get the multi-jurisdictions together that we're going to tackle this together in a collaborative sense and make sure that we hold that paper up to the city and say we are all in harmony on this. No more pointing fingers, but focus on getting things done, which would be that critical first priority.
And you said that you want to have an emergency shelter bed available for every person who needs it. How many do you think that is, and how do you get to that number?
Yeah, so you're going to work in concert with the county. The county has promised 1,000 new shelter beds by the end of 2025. So we start with that, and then we start adding emergency shelters up to the level where we have empty beds every night, and we're able to enforce our no camping codes. There's no magic number. It's once you start adding that capacity, then you're able to find out once you get to 100 empty beds, you've got to slow that increase. And then you start enforcing your community safety laws where everybody has a bed, and we're able to now start removing those tents and RVs and such because we have care provided for everybody in the city. How many does it mean? I gotta think it's gonna be 1,000 or more.
You talked about the no camping ban, the city's no camping ban. So once you have an emergency shelter for everyone, you intend to enforce the city's no camping ban, and what does that look like?
It means our outreach workers go out in the morning or at night, and they're there to say, I want to help you. What does it look like? But you can't stay here. And every outreach worker, every resident, every police officer would always have a resource other than the jail to provide that basic care for somebody. And when you're able to provide that basic care, then you can enforce your no camping codes of no tents, RVs, or makeshift shelters.
So you've said you'd give them like a 90-day notice, and then on day 91?
Yeah, we'll definitely work through the process. But it's gonna be a flex system up. But remember, you're gonna have plenty of opportunities for people to come in. So we opened a winter shelter 3 weeks ago. UGM, Church of Nazarene, and Shelter Portland are collaborating. And on Tuesday night, I gave a tour, and we have 45 beds, and we had to turn away a half a dozen people. So this thought that people don't want shelter, that's an urban legend. People want shelter. When you have to turn those people away with a blanket and say, go off into the night, and good luck. That's just heartbreaking. We have so many people that want care.
But what about people who do refuse shelter? Do you support jail instead?
Well, you have to have the threat and you have to have actual arrest. But if you're able to go up to that person and say that tent is no longer allowed by law, and you give them that threat, most people will move on or move into that shelter. Some people are going to be left on the street without that tent, but they won't be left without care. They'll always have that bed available when they're ready.
So the threat of jail, though, how realistic is it when the jail is full or near capacity and police staffing is pretty stretched? And you do have a lot of people on this new council, progressives, who don't think jail should be an option.
Well, it's a resource management. So talking to other mayors around the nation, when they ended unsheltered homelessness, what occurred was when they took away the tent as an option, one mayor told me a third went back home regionally. Well, imagine a third of the souls on our street going back to their homes regionally. It takes the pressure off of the arrest. It takes the pressure off of our jails, our hospitals, and so on. A third went back home locally. They were doubled up or they were on a couch. Much safer than being in a tent. And at the end of the day, one mayor noted only a third of the individuals on the street actually took me up on the shelter that I was providing for them. So you see, Laurel, by providing that care, taking away that shortcut of a tent or makeshift shelter, actually provides shelter for the community writ large and takes the pressure off of your jail. We don't want our officers arresting the homeless, putting them in jail, which is the second highest cost of housing. And when you do that, the one thing you guarantee is that person's going to be homeless when they're released the next day anyways.
You talked about tents and the county. The county has been giving out a lot of tents and tarps over time, and a report has said 6,500 tents, 24,000 tarps. It's now adjusting its policy to limit who they give the tents and tarps to and how often. What do you think about the county's policy when it comes to tarps and tents?
By this time next year, I'll hope we're not having this conversation. That point would be moot. That is what we are working for. That's what I'll work 7 days at to ensure occurs. We should never hand out a tent to a woman or a young person in their worst time of need. One of the things I noted, it's like putting Band-Aid on gangrene. We should not be doing that and codifying or fostering that sort of inhumane approach to our citizens.
Let's talk about the city-county relationship. There have been some discussion by 3 members of the current city council to sever that city-county agreement, and then the day after the election, the day before they were going to vote, they dropped that proposal, reportedly at your request. Is that true?
Right. Yeah, one of the things that I'd mentioned, and I really give those 3 councilors a lot of credit. After the election, they called and said, what do you want to do? And I explained to them, we don't have time for grand restructures or starting from scratch, that we have to treat the crisis like a crisis, which means on day one, let's act. Let's not be lawyering up with county on who has the better plan and creating a new plan. We've got to work with what we have to care for Portlanders today, rather than trying to come up with a plan that might work in 2 years. We've told Portlanders, wait, we'll work on a plan and we'll fix it next year. There are no more next years. We have too many people suffering on the street. Not only are people suffering on the streets, but families that are trying to take their kids to school using transit or along the roads. You know, we have so many unsafe circumstances. We got to stop and fix Portland now.
How do you feel, though, about the city-county agreement? Do you think it needs some changes?
Absolutely. I mean, it's 80% spot on. You got the promise of 1,000 shelter beds. You've got a promise of 150 treatment beds. Those are really good, meaningful things that we need. Is it enough? I think all of us would agree. When county said, or the Joint Office of Homeless Services said, we're going to end, or we're going to reduce unsheltered homelessness by 50%, I say, so what 50% stays on the street? So as a city, as a mayor, as the public safety lead official, those are citizens of Portland, so we care for those citizens and we do it immediately.
The environment and reducing carbon emissions is really a top concern for a lot of Portlanders. I know it's really important to you. The city has a goal to eliminate carbon emissions by the year 2050 and to reduce by 50% below 1990 emissions in just really 5 years.
Yeah.
You told us here on Straight Talk, you want to make Portland the city in this country that has the lowest carbon footprint anywhere. How do you do that?
You drop the mic, walk off the stage. So first of all, we are the most resourced city in the United States. Our Portland Clean Energy Fund today has hundreds of millions of dollars available for the best, brightest ideas to lower emissions. We know that the transition from a carbon-based economy to an electric-based economy is underway. We must supercharge Portland and start converting over homes and multifamily residences to electric and start giving those opportunities to electrify. We have to help our low-income families with heat pumps and other energy-efficient focuses, building up our new housing codes to make sure that we are the top of the line as far as green technology and green jobs. So it's an exciting time for Portland, and we have the most advanced renewable fuel standard. You know, we are removing fossil fuels from our transportation fleets by 2030. We'll all be focused on technology other than fossil fuel and diesel by 2030, using renewable diesel and electric and hydrogen and other technologies. So.
And that's what you do at your company,
It's
right?
what I do. You know, it's like in Portland, we have a zero fossil fuel free fleet. So I want everybody to know that these are not idle or hopes or promises. This is real, and we can do this with the right leadership at the right time.
You have your work cut out for you as
Yes,
you start
I do.
in January. We're going to continue our conversation with Mayor-elect Keith Wilson and what the transition to a new system of government might look like right after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and we are talking with Portland Mayor-elect Keith Wilson. Once again, thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
Well, one of the biggest jobs that you have right out of the gate is to hire a new city administrator in
Right.
this new form of government. Now, currently, Michael Jordan, the interim city administrator, is helping out with the transition. He said that he would stay for a while. What are your thoughts about your hiring and your search for a new city administrator?
I think the word you hit there was a while. So I'm entering into this job with the focus on crisis. So I'm trying to stabilize, not make big changes. And Michael Jordan is one of those rocks that we have in the city. He's done a great job. He and the mayor oversaw this grand restructure, and there's a lot of changes going on. So that a while is what we're talking about. And I'm having active discussions about Michael Jordan on what his near term looks like. How long can I utilize his experience while we're focusing on addressing the crisis? So, you know, stay tuned for that. We're in that transition discussion. There'll be a lot more to announce in this next 4 or 5 weeks. As far as hiring goes, we're kind of taking a wait and see on how much of the current staff can we utilize and work into the new year, so we can all work on that key first priority, that critical first leg, and then we'll have some information as the days and the weeks unfold.
Well, so many tough decisions ahead, including the budget.
right.
Current Mayor Ted Wheeler said the city's next budget is going to be a tough one, that revenues aren't keeping up with expenses, in part because of inflation. He suggested city departments should be prepared to make at least a 5 to 8% reduction in their baseline budgets, not including the Public Safety Bureau. And then you and the city administrator, I'm guessing that's going to be Michael Jordan, still need to
That's right.
present this new budget. Can you give us an idea of what that might look like?
You're right. Well, first of all, there has been no honeymoon. The mayor, after the election, quickly reached out and said, "When do you want to start?" And I explained, "How about tomorrow?" And he said, "Let's go." And so we've been in the budget meetings together. We've been looking at revenue, looking at expenses, the bureaus as a whole, and you're right, there are some holes. There's a fiscal cliff. I'm happy to say Michael Jordan is looking at some specific areas. We have unfilled positions, so we're already starting those very difficult discussions today to lessen the burden tomorrow. So the active work is already underway. I'm optimistic, but is there going to be some reductions? Yes. If we start today, they'll be less severe tomorrow. And so we've really actively begun that discussion today.
Help us understand what your new relationship is going to be like with this new city council. 12 members, and they're going to be significantly more powerful than the current council because you're not going to have any veto power. So
That's right.
What's that going to look like, and are you getting to meet some of them already?
Yeah. So let's talk about the power. So I think it's extraordinary that you have 12 very capable district elected individuals making policy. They get a focus on policy. They get a focus on talking to the neighbors, making great policy, where I'm focused on the enterprise and making sure the day-to-day core services are delivered to Portlanders well and when they need them, when they want them. I like it. I think it's a great. As far as meeting with them, I have a 2-hour meeting scheduled with every single one of them, and we're trying to get them in the next 2-3 weeks because we're getting our transition going and creating that first 100-day plan. I want to hear from every one of them now, and so if they have ideas and ideals, I want to factor them in now so we can supercharge their ideas even before we start. If we can use those ideas and foster them into the city, then I'm interested in listening to them. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to sit and listen to what they want to do. But it goes beyond that. It goes to our Multnomah County Commissioners, and Jessica Vega-Peterson and I have already begun meeting, trying to listen to everybody who's going to have a voice in the new government today, so we can come right out on January 1st and start delivering a cohesive, collaborative focus for citizens day one.
You've told me that you're hearing a lot of hope from people in Portland. You're building on that hope, and we already talked about baseball and a big swing. Well, let's talk about some more big swings, because you're passionate and you have a long-term vision for ultra high-speed rail in what's called the Cascadia Corridor. And you and I both attended a conference this week, the Cascadia Innovation Corridor. I had the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with Microsoft President Brad Smith, who is really a big proponent of this high-speed rail. How do you see the city of Portland fitting into making this vision of what we're looking at right here come true?
So high-speed rail is transformative. It's not just additive. You just don't go in a train from Portland to Seattle. It's exponential. When you can add Salem and Independence and Silverton and these small timber towns that have been disinvested 30 minutes away from Portland and being able to work in the central city, the high-wage jobs, and then take that capital back to those smaller cities and start building up affordable housing and great schools and great communities. You bring those urban and rural communities together, you've bridged the divide. So it's so much more than just high-speed rail, but it brings the entire community in a brand new main street from Vancouver, BC to Eugene. It brings us all together in this mega region, and it takes care of an awful lot of issues. You don't have overloaded roadways and runways and railways anymore. Everything just starts moving in a exponential fashion where everything, you can get everywhere and you don't have to use a car anymore, which is really one of those most extraordinary thoughts.
But what's the timeline? Is it really going to come to fruition? Because I think I've heard about this for years.
Yeah, it's always said in 20 years.
Right.
Because it started with Tom McCall. So let's think about it.
Goes back a ways.
But the good thing is that you have to start the funding. We can all dream, but it comes down to funding. I'm happy to say the federal government has a 9-to-1 match. For every dollar Oregon brings forward, the federal government will match $9 now. And so we have our first meaningful bill coming to the legislature in 2025. Washington just passed their bill 2 years ago, and they hope to have, by the end of the year, a $150 million bucket to begin the planning. So the funding is now true, it's meaningful, and the planning's going forward, and I think we're ready for it. There's like every industrialized nation in the world has it, except for the United States. I think it's time.
It is time. Long overdue. A quick mention, though, to tie in here before we wrap it up, is that you also have the stream of having this Cascadia Olympics. I think you said in summer of 2040, if we don't have high-speed rail before that, but might have to be pushed out. But you kind of envision having Olympics with Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC, all being tied together, 2 countries, 3 cities.
That's right. Yeah, the first bi-country Olympics called the Cascadia. And it's very expensive, but I know when you do big things in America, you generally have 1 or 2 things. You have a war or you have a spectacle. Well, let's stay away from the wars, but the Olympics are the spectacle, and to tie it together, you had to have high-speed rail. We could do big things with that date, time certain. It's what they're doing in LA in the 2028 Olympics. The first high-speed rail line is expected to be operational a few months before the Olympics open from Las Vegas to LA. And everybody's working like mad to get that brand new high-speed rail segment open.
Well, that'll be inspiration for us. I want to give you about 35 seconds for a final message for Portlanders watching.
Thank you, Laurel. And I appreciate this opportunity. You know, I really want everybody to know that, and I say this often, the Portland Renaissance that we all want is within our reach. I feel this election was that focus on hope. I came with a key message. Now we've got the hard work, but it's a matter of the hard work with all of us working together. And if we do that, when we do that, we can bring hope to Portland. I think we have a new chapter on January 1st, but I'm really going to point out it's all of us working together to repair, restore, and revitalize our community. We have everything we need. Now it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Mayor-elect Keith Wilson, thank you for joining us, and
Thank you,
best
Laurel.
of luck to
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Be sure to join us next week when my guest is Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. You can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.